What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. With me, as always, is Pastor Leo. We are here to help you take a next step in your relationship with Jesus. We're so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to episode 109 of the Grow Podcast. Pastor Leo, welcome to 109.
Everyone.
This is our seventh, right?
Right.
With just the two of us. Eighth
Yes.
total, but seventh with just the two of us. So clearly we're hitting our groove now, hitting our rhythm. I would like to say in the 6 episodes we've done, you've brought me way more food than Pastor Mike ever brought me in like 100 episodes. Although he did bring food like his that was for the lobby. He brought ice cream the last time he was on the lobby, which was great. Shout out to Pastor Mike for the ice cream. But you've been bringing us a variety of foods that we've been trying. The one from last week,
The Okoy.
the Okoy,
O-K-O-Y.
at this moment is my favorite all-time Filipino food.
Ooh, more than lumpia.
It's number one,
No.
which surprised me. I didn't think it was going to happen. I mean, it looked and smelled good immediately, but yeah, it's number one.
Wow.
It's number one. I asked you for the recipe once the podcast was over. I'm still waiting for that, so we'll see. I trust you.
With bitterness in your voice.
Yeah. Are we covering bitterness today? Let me check my notes anywhere. No, we are going to continue in our study of Romans today. Mm-hmm. We're finally to Romans chapter 4.
Yes, we
Excited
are.
about that. We talk about some old people in this one. That'll be good.
Very old.
I mean, I guess technically everybody we're talking about in this is old since this was written a couple thousand years ago.
True.
But when this was written, the people Paul talks about here are old. We're very old. So
Ancient,
that'll be
like it.
ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Well done. Excited to get to that. But before we do, how have you been?
I have been great.
You've been great. Wow, you've been great. So your kids are here from time to time.
Yes.
And
most of the time.
Most of the time. And I am a big fan. And I feel like, especially your daughter, is finally starting to like warm up to me. Like the first.
Oh no, we need to change that.
The first few months, maybe not few months, but a couple weeks, like after school was over, she'd just kind of like she's very polite, so she'd give me like a nod and a smile or a quiet hello. Mm-hmm. And now she like gets excited when I walk up and whatever dumb thing I've decided to say to her that day, because I, think I need to make her laugh. So that's my every time I try. She's like the sweetest kid ever. So she clearly takes after her mom. We're very happy, thankful for Andy.
Yeah.
I think Andy probably didn't make the food for today.
No,
it appears
it comes in a box.
It appears that it's in a box.
Right.
And the other food that Andy has made did not come. Well, it came in a box, but not this kind of box.
Mm-hmm.
I
This
think,
one is.
I think it's time. I see Coconut Panda on the side, which we ate a couple weeks ago. If you don't get that reference, you haven't been with us every week. You need to go back a couple episodes.
Yes.
I think that would have been 107.
107
when we ate Coconut Panda.
The Coconut Panda.
What is it actually?
It's polvoron.
No, but what was the Coconut Panda actually?
Boko pandan.
Yeah, Boko pandan. Mm-hmm. Nailed it. Yeah. Fluent.
Boko pandan.
So this is what are we eating today?
Polvoron.
That is not what that says. It says polvoron. Assorted polvoron.
Yeah.
Say it one more time.
Polvoron.
Okay, you're definitely saying a B.
Yep.
And
for us,
there is no B in this word.
The V and the B are very similar.
Okay, so polvoron.
Polvoron, yes.
Did I nail it? Was it fluent?
Yes.
Is everyone at PH going to make fun of me when I see them again? Like last time? Actually, that's not true. Everyone at PH was very, very nice.
Except for one.
Other than one.
Yes.
And we won't mention Haniel by name because that would be rude, so we're not going to do that.
True.
But okay, so I just because I can break down polvoron, I'm guessing it's like a toasted wheat cake would be my guess. Mm-hmm. Or it's
not that it says in the
toasted wheat cake on there, but okay.
It's
Is this a
comes
dessert?
from a Spanish treat that they from what I read, they usually gave them out during Christmas, which is a hint of the kind of the taste of this. It's on the sweet side.
So it tastes like a ho-ho mint mocha from Caribou Coffee?
Close enough.
Oh, okay.
So these
I think Hattie's producing today, and I think she wants a ho-ho mint mocha from Caribou Coffee now. That's the one coffee drink that I've like get every year. And I don't drink coffee.
Mm.
But if I'm by a Caribou around Christmas time,
Well,
I get a
there we
ho-ho
go.
mint mocha.
So these come in.
Oh, they're like, interesting. This is not what
Different
I
flavors.
expected. This
See?
is not what I expected.
It's very, like I said, since it's a treat that they served in Christmas, and we got. We eat it almost any time.
Why don't you take one? Are you gonna partake?
Look at how colorful that is. So
Are you gonna partake?
It's like Christmas
today. Last week you didn't get any because Michael and I ate all of it.
Because here's the thing, it comes from the root word of that is pulbo.
What is pine pig? Sounds terrible.
It's pinipig.
What does that taste like?
The Filipinos will have fun with that. That's what they're gonna make you say. The pine pig.
And then there's ubi pine pig.
Pinipig is toasted rice.
Okay.
That they put in it, that they mix with the whole thing.
Hattie, what flavor would you like? You can have coconut panda, melon, pine pig, strawberry, ube, or ube pine pig, or plain. I'm going strawberry, so you can't have strawberry.
That's a lot.
The melon appears to be cantaloupe.
I recently had ube, and it's very good, but coconut's my favorite, so that's tough.
That's a tough.
Why don't
call.
you try? Because you weren't here when we tried the buko pandan. Buko pandan.
Yes.
So you should try that flavor.
Yeah.
You gotta come get it. Part of the bit, the producer shows up on camera. Don't kick the microphone cord. Say hi to Hattie, everybody. Hi, Pastor Hattie. All right, let's dig in. Michael, do you want me to throw you one of these? There's gluten in them, so Michael is not going to be joining us today.
We are so sorry about that. We feel bad.
Is it really dry?
It is dry because from the word pulbo, which is powder, Spanish for powder. So that gives a hint of the texture of it.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not the texture I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. But again,
wow, it's dry.
It is dry but very sweet, which is why when you ask me if I'm going to partake, because we used to use that as a contest for kids.
How do you eat it?
Slowly.
It's so dry. Yeah, slowly. Yeah.
And what we do with kids is we'll make them put the whole thing in their mouth.
Patty's just losing it.
And
the
then,
whole thing?
And then whoever gets to whistle first wins. So that's why when you ask me if I'm going to partake, that came to mind. But it's very sweet.
It is really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The strawberry is faint.
Mm-hmm. You will notice if you eat the other flavors that all the flavors are very faint.
Sure. It's not, by no means is it bad.
Mm-hmm.
The texture is difficult to comprehend. I really wish Michael could take a bite of it just because it's so startling.
It's startlingly dry.
It really caught me off. Like if I hadn't gone and got this, we would not be doing the rest of the podcast. We almost started
Which is
without
why
me
I
having
made
a
sure
drink.
you had a drink in front of you. I was looking at it.
I'm going to eat the rest of it because it's nice, but it's so dry.
Yeah.
And dense.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see like a great youth group game. You should give these to Pastor Anna and have them do that game that you were doing.
Like whoever whistles first wins.
Yeah, Michael, here, just feel how dense it is. Michael's in a goofy mood, so he pretended to almost fall over as he caught it. Wow, interesting. I don't know what flavor. I think that's the ube pine pig that you got over there.
Is it?
I don't know which. I don't know which one.
The same color.
Oh yeah, ube pine pig.
Mm-hmm.
What is ube?
Ube is like you see that purple thing.
Yeah.
It's like a root
fruit?
crop. It's like a yam, but it's purple.
I'm glad I didn't have the ube pine pig.
It's really good.
I'm not a yam guy. Well, those are good adjacent. I feel like the flavor would be really good. I'm just so startled by the texture of them. That's interesting. I'm gonna have more of it. I might bring one home.
We should have
my wife try it.
It's either a girl podcast or the lobby where you get to do.
We could do, yeah. That's more of a lobby type thing. But this is the Grow podcast, and we are doing a study on Romans, so we probably should jump into that.
Yes, let's.
Because we've been distracted by this box of scary things.
The box of Christmas lights, because it looks like
it
a
is.
box
Yeah,
of
that's
Christmas
very
lights.
colorful. Very colorful. So we're starting Romans chapter 4,
Yes, we
verses
are.
1 through 12. Another short one. If you haven't been with us so far, we encourage you to pause this one and go back and check out the last. I think when did we start? 103. I think was our first. I don't know. It's in the description when we started Romans 1. So I would encourage you to check that out and catch back up. But you certainly don't have to. We're glad that you're here regardless. But we will be mentioning things we've talked about in previous podcasts as we go along, because this may shock you. But when Paul wrote this, he meant for you to read all of it.
What?
Yeah. It's almost like he wrote it as one letter, not a bunch of random chapters.
That is so weird.
So today we're in Romans 4, 1 through 12. So why don't you, as we do every week here, Leo, kind of give us the main ideas or things we should walk away with from these verses.
Sure thing. So for the fourth chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans, it's not just the first. It's not just the verses that we're going to talk about. So this includes next week's. The main idea of chapter 4 is about exercising our faith in Jesus. And this sounds very easy to say, but if in practice it's very hard to do, is our exercising our faith in Jesus by giving the leadership of our lives fully to him and by trusting that he's done everything necessary to save us. Again, very easy to say, in principle, very hard to do.
Yeah. And we mentioned it briefly earlier, but tell us a little bit about how Paul goes about showing us how to exercise our faith.
So Paul does this by using the OG of
Ooh,
righteousness.
the OG of righteousness. Is that his official title?
Yes.
I think which translation of Hebrews refers to Abraham as the OG of righteousness? Because I want to read that the Pastor Leo translation.
Yeah, the Pastor Leo translation.
Maybe it's probably more the Pastor Leo paraphrase.
Right.
Yeah. But
There we go.
all right, the OG of righteous living.
So the OG of righteous living, his
Is
name
that you?
is... No, well, close enough, but his name is...
Last week you told us you were the king of metaphors, so I
Right.
didn't know if this was a new title of yours.
Yeah, no.
This is for someone else.
This is for someone else. His name is Abraham. Paul uses King David as well, but he focuses more on Abraham because he is the OG of righteous living.
Everyone's always trying to keep us Davids down, but you know,
Unfortunately.
we live with it. All right, so why Abraham, other than the fact that he's the OG of righteousness, which I can't say without laughing, but I will keep trying.
But because Abraham is considered as the ancestor of all the Jews in Rome.
Sure.
And all the Jews actually considered him as their ancestor even today. He is the original patriarch. So for them, Abraham was the example of righteous living. So and if you think about it, this was before the nation of Israel was established. Before Moses' time, this is before Moses' time, this is before the Ten Commandments, this is before the 613 laws. This was before Sabbath keeping was instituted. This was before the laws pertaining to clothes and food and the food were put into place. Paul is by using Abraham, Paul is showing that Abraham could not have justified himself.
So yeah, he's going back before the law.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Right. So
I don't I can't count how many times I've read Romans.
Right.
I'm not saying it's like a million, but it's been a lot of times. I don't know if I've ever thought about like that's a big part of why, you know, I understand that Abraham is an example of what we're talking about here, but
Right.
specifically thinking about how, you know, how they would have thought about, well, Abraham predated all of that. Like
Yes.
we know it in theory and as Paul talks about it, but how they would have specifically thought, especially the Jews, the Jewish Christians in Rome.
Right.
They would have thought about, no, this is like way before the law.
Mm-hmm.
This is pre-law. This is the first covenant that
Right.
God made with us.
That's
That's
true.
interesting.
So Paul is in fact showing like you can't say that, look, he's not working every 6 days, so we should also not work
Sure.
every 6 days. So or look, he's not eating shellfish, or he's not eating pork, so we should not also be eating pork. so things like that. Or look,
Yeah.
he's not wearing basketball shorts made of mixed linen and wool.
No, these are not. These are golf shorts. Thank you very much.
Golf shorts.
These
There
are my
we go.
dress. I wear my dress shorts to work. But also, did they wear basketball shorts? Is that a thing? I missed that. I didn't know they invented basketball.
It's in the book of Hebrews, chapter 650.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'll check that one out later.
So Paul is showing the believers in Rome and us that Abraham was not declared to be in a right standing with God. He was not declared righteous because of his works.
Sure.
That's good news, because in reality, none of us are. None of us are. We talked about that last week as well. Abraham had nothing to boast about. Abraham, because this was before everything, because he was before the law, because he was before Moses and the 10 Commandments and the 613 laws and all of that, he can't boast about all of those because he didn't know about all of those. So in that case, neither do we. We can't boast about it as well. We can't boast about the old lady we helped to cross the street yesterday. We can't boast about how many digits we use or we have for our tithes and offering. Like I use like 10 digits for my tithes last Sunday. So wow.
How many of them were after the decimal point?
Like 1 and then dot and then 9.
I round to the 1/1000th of a penny.
And I'm gonna make sure my bank does it.
Yeah.
So we can't boast about how many or what kinds of baptism you had, if it's sprinkling or you got dunked or you were injected by the
Injected. What?
We're gonna come up with something like that. We're gonna baptize.
No, we're
through
not.
injection.
We are not going to do that.
No. Okay. So, or whether it was done in a pool or in a lake or on the stage, in a tub, you can't boast about it. You can't boast about what religious organization you belong to. You can't boast about what denomination you swear allegiance to. You can't boast about what church you go to. You can't boast about all of that, because just like Abraham, we have nothing to boast about. The only thing that we can say is I was saved because of Jesus.
So Abraham gets to be the OG of righteousness, as you titled him.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he believed? That's it. Because, like, I believe. Why don't I get to be the OG of righteousness?
Why don't I get to be?
Yeah,
the OG?
right.
Right.
Good question. So is that it? It's just Abraham believed, and that's all. That's all there was.
Right? It sounds so simple.
It does. Obnoxiously simple. Like, with how difficult we make this,
Right.
That sounds unacceptably simple.
Well,
so please make it more complicated for me.
Okay, let's complicate it. So, 2 things. First, Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48, that we need to be perfect.
All right, well, that's the end of the Grow Podcast.
Yay!
Good luck this week.
Yep, just be perfect. Remember to be perfect.
Your homework this week is to be perfect.
Right. So
Maybe we'll keep going.
So he says, be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. Now, the wrong answer to that, when Jesus tells us be perfect, the wrong answer is, yeah, sure, can do. Thumbs up. And because we can't, right? If the moment you wake up, you stepped on a Lego for the parents, I know, I'm sorry.
The worst. Little Paw Patrol characters.
Oh.
Especially when they fall on their side. And so their feet that help them
Are
stand
sticking up?
Yeah. Oh my word. It's on the level of Legos, and my 3-year-old has way too many of them.
There we
If any
go.
of you would like some Paw Patrol characters, please
So-
break into my house.
If you have experienced that and your reaction was, instead of singing Amazing Grace,
I want to meet the person who sings Amazing Grace when they step on a Lego in the
Right.
living room.
so there we go. So wrong answer is sure, Jesus can do. The right answer would be, but I can't be perfect, because none of us are. No one is. And that's what Paul has been trying to tell us in these past few chapters. Is the truth is Jesus was dead serious. I mean, pardon the pun.
Oh, that's... Come on, Leo.
That's a Pastor Mike level of cheesiness.
Oh, my word.
So, right? But Jesus was serious when he said that no one goes to the Father except through him. And because Jesus is righteous because of his very nature. He is the Son of God. And by God's grace, through faith in Jesus, that same righteousness is given to all who believe. That's the first thing. The second thing is, let's define the word belief. Belief is not just a fanciful kind of belief, like the "I believe I can fly."
Oh, please keep singing. Please keep singing.
No, that's it. That's the end of my singing career.
That's see, if my kids don't listen to the Grow podcast, as they are 6 and 3, but if they did, they would now want to watch Space Jam because you just sang that,
Yay.
and that's the opening of Space Jam.
Is good.
It's fantastic.
But anyway,
To clarify,
right,
the original with Michael Jordan.
Yes, please.
None of this LeBron James nonsense.
Right.
I hope any young people that may listen to the Grow podcast understand.
Right.
Michael Jordan is the GOAT.
He is the OG.
He's the OG Space Jam.
Right. Of Space Jam living.
Might not be righteous, but he was Space Jam.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not that kind of belief. It's not the "I believe I'm a unicorn" kind of belief.
Interesting.
Right? It's factual belief also is not it. It's not equal to the "I believe that 1 + 1 = 2" kind of belief. It's not equal to "I believe that the earth goes around the sun" kind of belief.
So it's not like I can prove it, therefore I trust it kind of
right.
thing? Okay.
So the true belief is fully entrusting yourself to someone or something. And Abraham showed this when he put himself, and it's not just himself, it's himself and the lives of his family into God's hands and went where God sent him.
I feel like, oh, go ahead.
And remember, it took 25 years. If you remember, we talked about this when we went through the story. Yep. Abraham was 75 years old when God promised that he would have a son. Him and Sarah would have a son. And it took 25 years for that to be fulfilled. So 75 plus 25 is 100. So he was 100. So it took that long. For those who are more than 25 years old, you know how long 25 years can get. So
it's true.
So it's not a "I believe that 1 + 1 = 2" kind of belief. It's a "I'm 75 years old and I'm going to wait and I'm going to trust in God for 25 more years for his promise to be fulfilled" kind of belief.
The kind of belief that Michael and I and now Hattie have had in you the last 4 weeks as
Yes.
you've given us a variety of foods that we haven't had before.
Similar to
particularly on the Coconut Panda
on the
episode.
Coconut Panda, yep.
The Buko Pandan.
Again, if you have not seen it, go back and
It's very
watch
scary to look at
Right.
and very delicious to eat.
But when his face changed, it's that kind of
that's
belief.
why you're here, yeah.
Right.
So, and I think too, you know, in using Abraham and as the OG of righteousness, as you said, but like clearly Abraham wasn't perfect. You know, that 25-year span you just talked about, there's a big whoopsie in there from Abraham as
true.
he stopped trusting in God's promise and went and said, I'm going to fulfill this on my own with
someone else.
a servant. Yeah.
Right.
And but even that, you know, so like clearly going back to what you said before, when Matthew 5:48, we need to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect.
Right.
The person he's using as an example was clearly not perfect.
Yes.
Because our righteousness is not based on what we can and cannot do.
Yes. Exactly.
So the action that doesn't save us, but this kind of belief is demonstrated by action. It's kind of like how, you know, Jesus talks about how like a good tree will bear fruit. Like
Right.
if you really have this belief, there will be action. It's not that your action saves you. It's just true belief will bring this kind of action. The Bible refers to them as steps of faith sometime, or leaps.
Leaps.
That's a fun old word. I don't feel like we use leap enough anymore. I'm going to bring that back. That Hattie's agreeing with me. Hattie and I around the office will be using the word leap for the next month, and I'm pretty excited about it. So why don't you talk to us about some of the leaps of faith that Abraham took? Because he took some big ones.
He really took some big ones. And again, just like what we talked about, when we talk about these leaps of faith, there are, and I'm sure countless more, many small and even big missteps or misleaps
Yes, misleaps, please. Yeah, I don't know if that's a word that's ever been used.
that he made in between these, but the fact of the matter is he did not stop believing, and that's what is important. But number one, he left his home country and went on a long journey into an unknown place with an unknown culture. He doesn't know about it. There were no Google Maps before. There were no Wikipedias. There were no like, hey Google, what's in this place, or show me that place, or there wasn't even like street views back then, right?
no street views. That would have been really terrifying. Right. I don't think we give enough credit to how scary that would have been.
Yeah.
Also, an understanding of the ancient world, newcomers into areas weren't always treated wonderfully.
That is so true.
Actually, mirrored by our current world,
right?
Sadly, but you're just like, I'm just gonna wander over here, and who knows who's there and what they're gonna do to me because I'm there now. But that'd be terrifying.
And that's why, like, many people nowadays, before they go to a place, they get in touch with the people there through social media usually, and they're gonna ask, what job do I have? What kind of jobs can my husband or my wife can get? We don't
go to a restaurant without like deep diving it on the internet these days. I mean,
that's so true.
Almost nobody attends a church that they haven't checked out online. It's not zero, but a very high percentage now like have at least watched a service or gone to their website. I don't ever go to a restaurant almost if I haven't looked at the menu. Even if you're just like walking in a new town, that's why they put the menu on the on the outside so you can look at it.
They do that.
Meanwhile,
nowadays.
Abraham's just like, all right, let's
go.
Let's wander. I'll bring Lot with me.
Speaking of which, the second one is he allowed Lot to choose the best of the land.
Yeah, huge mistake.
Huge mistake.
I mean, clearly not, but boy, my brain is like, that's not the right move.
Yep. I mean, usually, right? Whenever we are made to choose, we make sure that we get to choose the best. We get to choose the better half of the deal. So he allowed his nephew Lot to choose the best of the land. The other one is that he bargained for Sodom. I mean, he didn't just say he didn't just say, oh, okay, have at it. Sure. Wipe them all out. Yep. He said, what about if I find this number of good people in there?
Yep.
I couldn't. What about
he keeps lowering the number.
Lower and lower and lower. But he did. He bargained for Sodom.
Yeah.
And as mentioned there earlier, he believed in God's promise. He would have a son. And he gave up. He had a son, just one. And then God asked for him to be sacrificed. And he did. Well, he not really he did, but he obeyed.
Hit the end of the story there, Leo. Well,
Period.
And at New Hope, we actually had that message not that long ago. We had Pastor Mark Butcher with us a few weeks ago, and that's the message he gave was on that, Abraham trusting in God there, which is a good one. But that's a lot of leaps of faith there, Leo.
That is. And so Abraham did not just believe in God like I believe 1 + 1 = 2. That's not the kind of belief that he had. It's not just belief, he had faith in his God.
Let's touch on David as well before we wrap up. Another just flawless person.
Oh, yeah.
None of his misdeeds are recorded, only the good stuff.
He is such a good man.
Yeah. But the Bible talks about him as a man after God's own heart. So tell us, what does Paul talk about David?
Well, Paul talked about David's sin with Bathsheba.
Yeah, just jumps right into it.
Bathsheba, yay! And God's forgiveness for him. From David, we learned that forgiveness does not necessarily mean the absence or removal of consequences. And that's something that a lot of people still make a mistake in their way of thinking. Like, I already said sorry.
It's like my son just turned 6. It's so difficult to get him to understand. Like, there are still he's finally starting to get there, but like, yeah, you've said you're sorry. You're trying to do the right things now. There are still consequences from your actions. And we it's so funny because you have those conversations with your 6-year-old at such a low level, right? And then you think about how you could apply that same conversation to your own understanding of your relationship to God. True. And you're like, man, I maybe need to listen to my own words here.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Like even Gabriel, my son, he's 5. We talk about consequences all the time. We'd catch him doing something wrong, and he would say, "Sorry,
not
I'm
Gabriel."
Sorry. Yes. But yeah, he would say he's sorry, and he would even cry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But consequences are consequences.
Yep.
So just because we mess up doesn't mean that God can't forgive us anymore. Just because we suffer consequences doesn't mean that God didn't forgive us.
I think it's such a huge one. I think so many people fall away from their faith. I know people who have, because the consequences of their actions hit, and like, how could God let this happen to me?
Right.
Instead of understanding, like, no, I still did this thing, and there still will be consequences because of the thing that I did.
That's
true. It doesn't mean that I'm not forgiven, that God doesn't still love me.
That's true.
I feel like that's a really tough one for a lot of people.
Yeah. And just because, here's another thing, just because God forgave us doesn't mean that we don't need to go through consequences anymore.
Yeah.
That's what we just talked about. Yeah. And just because we messed up and suffered consequences doesn't mean that God can't redeem us and use what we went through for his glory.
Yeah.
And that we talked about, you mentioned that just now. For those who started to doubt God or became angry at God, we need to realize that just because we mess up, just because we suffered consequences, doesn't mean that God can't redeem us and what we went through, and he's going to use that for his glory. And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just something that we need to realize, and that's where faith comes in. That I may be suffering consequences right now, but God can use this for his glory. Yeah. So here's the bottom line. Number 1, the true believers in God are more closely related to Abraham than those who make up their own works-based salvation approach. So we need to realize that true believers in God are more closely related to Abraham because of our faith, because of our belief in God. Second, John Bunyan said, the man who does not know the nature of the law cannot know the nature of sin, which is true. You won't know that you're over the speed limit
if you don't see the speed limit sign.
Let's rephrase that. You won't know that you're going 15.
Oh, okay.
Over the speed limit. If there's no speed limit sign, well, you won't know that you're gonna suffer consequences because, or if you don't know that there is a law. So again, the main idea of chapter 4 is about exercising our faith in Jesus by giving the leadership of our lives fully to him. Because here's the thing. If he really is God, then let him be God. Because sometimes we say, like, Jesus is God, or I believe in God, but we don't want to give up the leadership of our lives fully to him. Yeah. We refuse. We fight with him over it. But if he really is God, then let him be God.
One of the things I love about how we're doing, like, we're going so slow through this and kind of diving so deep into such a small amount of verses every time is how we're seeing things build on top of one another. And as maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, we talked about when Paul was kind of talking about like being a true Jew, like what that really meant.
Right.
And especially, if you were a non-Jewish person reading that and you're like, does that mean I have to start following these Jewish laws or what? And then now as he comes in talking about Abraham, who was the patriarch of the Jewish faith, and both for the Jewish Christians in Rome and the non-Jewish Christians in Rome, to read that like, no, I'm a part of that Abrahamic line as a follower of Christ, even if I wasn't. And then same thing for a Jewish person to understand. This is the real way to be a son of Abraham. To fall to, like, I forget how you said it, but being like related to Abraham is following Jesus, because it was his faith that saved him, not his works. And now we have this way to do that on our own through Jesus. That's such a, like, it's powerful for us, but again, like, when you think about reading these things in the context of who they were written to and when they were written, that would have been so big for those people reading. Like, I'm just some Greek or Roman or whoever person living in Rome trying to figure out what it means to follow Jesus, and you understand like I'm a part of this thing that goes all the way back to the first covenant God ever made.
Right.
And it would just be, that would have been really, really powerful.
Life-changing.
Yeah, for sure. You've got some questions that you want us to wrestle with this week. We're going to put these they'll be in the podcast notes if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and they'll be in the description on YouTube so that you don't have to just memorize what Leo says right now.
That's true. Instead of the usual heart change.
Quick side note. I'm going to need everybody to start singing the Father Abraham song from Sunday school right now. Hattie's doing the motions, which is fantastic. I really wish the camera was flipped around. Do you remember that? Did you guys sing that song? Is that okay? I didn't know if that made it over to the Philippines or not. But if you didn't grow up in the church, it's a classic.
It is a classic.
Hopefully, I don't know if they still sing it these days, but it was a great one. Can we sing it for
worship like Sunday?
Sunday morning. Should we add that one to the night of worship coming up on the 30th? But
that's gonna be fun.
When you think about that song, though, like this is what it's talking about. This is exactly where that's from. It's this goofy song with actions that we sang in Sunday school, but it's a really powerful song.
It is.
If you think about it,
if you pay attention to it, pay attention to what you're singing. It is a powerful song. But okay, so here are some questions. Instead of just lessons, let's talk about questions that we can wrestle with this week. Number 1, are you willing to make the same leaps of faith and entrust yourself fully to God? Again, it's very easy to say. It's very hard to do. But it starts with just small, tiny steps of faith. But are you willing to make the same leaps of faith and entrust yourself fully to God? Second question, do you believe in the promises God makes to us in His Word? Like, not just the 1+1 kind of belief, the kind of belief that Abraham had. Do you have that kind of belief in the promises God makes to us in His Word? Do we know, or are we aware even of what those promises are? If not, the Bible is there. Start reading. And then the third one is, can you think of one area in your life, and this is the one that's important, can you think of one area in your life right now where you need to take this kind of leap of faith? If you do, talk to God about it.
And then our next step for next week, our homework or whatever, along with wrestling with those questions, we're going to be finishing up Romans 4. So
13 to 25.
13 to 25. So again, we really want to encourage you to be reading along with us, just because you're going to get more out of it if you're reading the scripture before the podcast. But again, don't not join us because you didn't read.
Right.
That's not.
We can pause.
You definitely can pause and read real quick, but it's just we want you to do that because you will grow more from it.
Yes.
Not because I don't get any kickback from the YouVersion Bible app when our people use it for the Grow podcast. I don't think the people who made YouVersion get kickback from it. So
I don't think so.
We want you to read it because the whole purpose of the Grow podcast is for us to grow in our faith, and growth starts with the next step. And the first next step of this is diving into God's Word. And so be doing that, and then make sure, again, like I talked a lot about it last week, but let's not just be listening to the Grow podcast for fun because it's funny to watch David eat weird Filipino food, which isn't weird, I guess, to you, but it's weird to guy who grew up in Minnesota.
We're having fun with it. I know the Filipinos who are watching this are.
Good. I'm glad I can provide entertainment for all of our Filipino brothers and sisters out there. But make sure that we're also growing in our relationship with Christ from this, because that's the real reason that we do it. So thank you, Pastor Leo. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Turn notifications on your phone so you get notified. But new episodes go up every single Monday at 6 a.m. I woke up this morning much earlier than I planned on. I don't know if a kid was mad. I don't remember what the reason. I'm going to blame my kids even if it wasn't their fault. And it was like 6:40, and I just opened up YouTube and looked, and there were already like 7 views on the video. I'm like,
there we go.
Good for you people checking it out at 6 a.m. So we still got some 6 a.m. fans out there. Maybe there are some of our friends over in the Philippines. That's a bit of a cheat because it's probably not 6 a.m. there when it's 6 a.m.
like
here.
7 p.m.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure we're not in the same time zone as the Philippines.
What?
Yeah. But we love all of you. We're so glad that you joined us here. I'm very distracted right now because I just noticed that your can of Sam's Cola is bragging on it since 1991, and I don't feel like that's old enough. Like, How long has Bubbler been around? Like 3 years? They shouldn't put, hey, since 2019 on this can.
Makes you feel old.
But it makes me, I'm like, 1991's not long enough ago, but maybe it is. It probably is. I'm just old these days. But anyway, New Hope family, and New Hope family, I mean all of us who join from the Grow podcast, no matter if you're in the Philippines, if you go to PH Church, if you go to Central City Church, if you don't go to church and you just hang out with us. We love you, New Hope family. We're so glad that you were here. You have a God that loves you even more than we can. And I hope that you'll take your next steps this week and grow closer to him. And then we will see you next week.
Ingat.